Hello, welcome back to another episode of D54. I'm Amit, joined by Doug. Welcome back, Doug. How you going?
Hey guys. Oh man, I'm good. It's Friday night. I'm feeling fine. I'm a little disheveled right now because I'm a stay-at-home parent to a toddler. So my world is chaos, but good. How about you?
Not too bad, man. Been pretty fine. We have slowed up a little bit on the channel, guys. You know, we are, as I think I might have mentioned last time, but maybe not. We are focusing a little bit more these days on the longer format reviews, these deep dives. So, you know, if you enjoy that stuff, then you're in the right place. We're going to be doing a lot more of these coming up, and probably more focus on these because we really enjoy them. And
it's
today,
like my bread and butter. It's my favorite.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're long time fans of the show, you probably realize that we are probably the most passionate when we talk in this long format, and we just let the conversation flow. Much more than any of the other content we put out, to be honest. This is easily my favorite. And this is really what keeps me going. Just absolutely love the conversations, and what a movie to discuss this week. We are talking about the movie Aham. Now, this movie comes from the poll that we did, but it was actually, honestly, surprisingly to me, the loser of the poll. The movie that won that poll was the movie Spirit, which we reviewed last week. Which was very good, but I think we had some general criticisms of that movie. We didn't really fall in love with that movie, but I can say that I enjoyed this movie probably a lot more than I did Spirit,
and I think I echo you 100%. And, you know, to tag into that, you were talking about earlier, we are going to be discussing some of the comments we got from the movie Spirit at the end of the video, right?
Yes, that's very good. Yeah, we are interested in you guys. We love the engagement on these videos that we do. We get some just with like so many great comments, so many great insights, including the last video too,
which we both love.
Which we absolutely love. Yeah, it's so great. So what we are going to start doing is stay tuned to the end and also leave a detailed comment. If you leave an insightful comment, which, you know, is really good, we are going to take that comment and discuss it further on at the very end of this video. So, you know, you might want to stick around for that because we're going to talk about that for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, some of the comments that we got left. And we're going to try to do that for each of these deep dives. So if you leave a comment on this video, stay tuned for the next one because we'll probably be talking about the comments you mentioned there on the next one. So just a little something we're doing new. We're trying to change things up a little bit, but yeah, it's something that we want to do because, again, we just love the engagement and we'd love to know what you guys thought about this movie specifically, because this one I think was just, we had a lot of comments. In fact, the reason why we did this was because in the poll that we did, despite Spirit winning the poll, I think just about every comment was about like watch Aham. So there's quite a big contrast between like what I'm seeing on like the results and what I'm seeing, what people are talking about and what they're saying. And they're saying that Aham is a better movie, watch that one, but we go with the popular because that's what the poll is for. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to look at this movie. So if it is good, you guys comment. If you guys don't comment, we don't know to watch it or not. So thank you guys for commenting because we got to enjoy this really just, I would say one of the more unique movies that we have seen, to be honest.
Yeah, this one was I
can't remember.
A real ride, you know, like in the way that like I've seen many movies that kind of bait and switch you, and not necessarily that this one was a real bait and switch, but like I did not understand at all what I was getting myself into. And we talked about this briefly before we hit record. You and I both went in completely blind. No idea what it was. You sent it over to me. I was like, okay. And I hit play. And that was the only familiarity that I had. I didn't even know Mohanlal was in this movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like that's how blind I was going into it. You know, there's always an assumption, like maybe.
Assume at this point.
Right. But, and like, to be clear, you know, I send us all the recommendations for those movies. And somebody even mentioned that in another comment, you know, like some of the actors beside Mohanlal, it just happens to be that a lot of the ones that are culturally relevant to you guys, and I'm assuming, you know, will inevitably contain some of these big name actors. Yeah. And he was excellent in this movie. But what I really enjoyed was what the movie dealt with in terms of themes and the way that it kind of played those out. And I have some issues just with some minor gripes, but like you have to pull yourself into the time at which this movie was made, right? Like we briefly discussed before we hit record, like hypnotism isn't necessarily going to get you to reveal all these big things that you've kept secret from everybody else in your life to somebody and you didn't want them to know. It's not going to work that way. But you have to set that aside to see the story that the movie wants you to observe and, you know, digest and really sit with. And I really enjoyed not knowing anything about this going in because I feel like if I had seen a trailer, I would have been betrayed by my own expectations for what the movie may have been. And I'm just thrilled that I went in absolutely bonkers blind, and I had a great time.
No, it's interesting. So I probably went with a bit more context. I didn't know I didn't know Mohanlal was in the movie, and the way I actually got to know about this movie was actually a friend of the program, Bibin, who's helped us a lot in the back, with some of the trivia, recommending us what movies to watch. Been a big time fan, been a big help as always. But he had made a video of like a Mohanlal mashup for his birthday or something like that, some kind of tribute video where he put together a lot of scenes, and I reacted to that video. It's on the channel. You guys can check it out, and Doug, I'll send it to you as well so you can take a look at it. It's an awesome video. It basically just goes through Mohanlal's, as we know, his expressions. Like, oh my God, like you don't need to say much more. You don't need fancy edits. You need nothing. You can just focus on his eyes, his face, his expressions are so there's just so much you could take in with that. But he had sent me that, and there was this one, it just like flashed past, and it was the scene with him looking at the whatever that was, that like art house like moment where they just taking us somewhere else.
Yeah, when he's laying down next to Reggie.
Yeah. So there was that scene, and I was like, I basically asked him like, "Hey man, what is this movie from? Like, this looks really fascinating." Just that scene itself just got me really intrigued. So I knew that, but then as soon as I started this movie and I saw that he was in like a Swamiji outfit, like he's like a priest, like a Hindu priest, and I'm like, wait, is this the right movie? Like, what is going on here? Like, he looked like he was in a business suit. He looked like he was doing something else. Like, this is not the movie I expected, and that went for a long time. I knew a little bit more than you did, but honestly, I was caught so off guard by this movie. I didn't expect it to take me where it took me, and I was all in for the ride because it was a lot of fun. But I also enjoyed, like, it's interesting because I think we have covered movies that look into themes. Like we looked at Spirit, we talked about alcoholism, we've talked about Tanmatra, which was on another, just on a whole different plane altogether. But in terms of entertainment, this one is pretty high up there. I was honestly, I could divorce myself a little bit from the themes and just watch it as an entertainment piece, because Mohanlal going unhinged like he did, oh my God, it was
it played out more like see. And it had elements of each of the genres, right? Like you had some really good comedic bits, and like that's another thing that I kind of buck up against, where it was like, should I be laughing at the mentally ill people? But it is clearly set up for comedy. That like, he's on the phone with the movie producers and all this other stuff. But like, then you chuckle and you kind of remember, like, do you happen to know when this movie came out?
Yeah, 1992.
Okay, so 1992, man. All right, 1992. We had. Oh boy, did we have a whole set of the way that we looked at the world back then. Sorry. At that time, yes, you want to laugh at the mentally ill people that are fixing the radio, but I'm not really fixing the radio, but I'm fixing the radio. Like, and then the old man, like, that was a really interesting way to start the movie, with the old man talking about going to see his sons. Cause I was like, oh, we're going with this man to go see his sons. Same. And it wasn't until about 15 minutes later, I was like, no, we're not. Like, absolutely we're not, so it did a really nice job of kind of threading a whole bunch of different stories around what eventually became our central thesis of the movie, which was looking at somebody that had a compulsion to control the environment around him. And the one failing I will really give the movie, so I can divorce myself from like, do we laugh at mentally ill people? When this movie was made, absolutely we do. And these people are giving powerhouse comedic performances. So of course I'm going to. And you recognize a lot of these faces, right?
Yes.
These are big name actors. So you set all that stuff aside, look at it from the perspective of 1992, but really getting to the point that it's this like this central, I need to control my environment and I want what I have around me to be under my purview, and I need it so bad that I will construct an elaborate fantasy to make sure that it is still mine, and as a matter of fact, it is giving me permission. That said, I wanted a little bit more of the relationship with the parents and what happened there, because we just get that kind of true. After the huge revelation of like, I have this mental illness, which was even discussed before he was getting married in his own brain, then all of a sudden we just get that line like, no, I'm not in contact with my parents. Right. Like, so that was the one thing I wish we had a little bit more context on, but otherwise enjoyed it so thoroughly and loved that I did not see it coming. And anyway, for a long part of this movie, I was like, oh, this must be the progenesis of like why Life of Pi exists. Here's a person that has 3 religions, and like, and I was like, whoa, no, that isn't the movie at all.
No, definitely not. And we are going to be reacting to some of the scenes. So the ones you mentioned, actually, yeah, I got a couple teed up here, which I'll can explore a little bit more during that time. But overall, man, I think we both really enjoyed this movie. So, yep, you guys buckle in. It's going to be a movie, you know, it's going to be a review reaction style that we do. So we have a lot to say and a lot to react to. Let's get into it, man. Looking forward to this one.
Oh, yeah. And but before, you know, if you're wondering this is Liquid Death, not a sponsor of the show. But if you watch the Spirit review and you're like, Doug, what are you doing? Drinking a beer? No. That's lime water.
There you go. It's all safe. All right, let's get into this one.
Hallelujah.
I really love the establishing shots. And maybe that's just like indicative of 1992 and that time, but I kind of I really do just like miss this era of filmmaking. Like
Same.
You see mountains in the background. This is a full real place.
Me too. I really love that aesthetic. It has a charm to it, right?
It really does. And you know, of course, you know, the grain and stuff of, you know, I assume this may have been from a VHS or something.
Yeah.
But it took me back.
4 വർഷം മുമ്പ് ഒരു ഞായറാഴ്ച കുർബാന കേട്ടുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഞാൻ ഇവിടെ ചാർജ് എടുത്തത്. കർത്താവിന്റെ തിരുവത്താഴ സന്ദേശത്തിന്
I'm looking at this. There's so many characters as well in this movie. Like from start to finish, there's a lot of people involved in this movie.
And I really enjoyed her character as well. Just kind of acknowledging that this is a very special person that has the ability to like instill inspiration in the people around them, you know, and really just be a kind of unique force for good before we get into what is really going on here.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept that one pretty short, but I did want to include it because I do want to talk a little bit about just the first 45 minutes or whatever it is, like for the first 40 minutes and what they were sort of teeing up to do and things like that. And yeah, you are right. I did want to expand on it a little bit when you were saying before about the whole religious side. At the start of this movie, I thought we were gearing up for like a religious movie because the way they were doing, they have that scene right there. Then he has a monologue about basically God and talking about him, and then after that, it goes into I think a song that's also there. So there's a lot of like time put into that. So I was like, okay, wow. I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to Doug about, you know, does he like religious movies or not? But basically there are parts of it, but yeah, it definitely it takes a really sharp turn, I would say. So it just like pivots really quickly. But yeah, I just want to talk about that first 40 minutes because even though it was less, the pacing was different. I was really enjoying myself just seeing this community and seeing these people interact with each other and how the whole system works. The nun's position, like as a leadership role, the journalist position, like what's she going to do? How's she going to uncover everything? What are they going to do with this movie? How are they going to show us everything? So it was just a great way to just get you, you know, settled in, I would say. Like, you know, nice and
if
easy.
it didn't take the amount of time that it did to establish the universe that we're living in and the people and the stakes here, right? Because essentially the movie is saying, like, don't upset the apple cart. And this is what the nun, you know, the aunt, is so concerned about the entire time when she knows that her niece is going to start talking to this person and has like locked in because obviously, you know, it's Mohanlal. This is Charm City, right? Like this is somebody who can stand in a field and your eyes are drawn to that person, right? So you know that is something along those lines is going to happen. But what if that person, that is super charming person, is, you know, inherently flawed in a big, bad, deep way? And what if you know that poking that person is going to potentially reveal something like that and maybe even harm them, and, you know, but you don't want to hurt the person that you love, but you can't explain. So like spending those first 45 minutes being able to show you how the system works and how the community is involved and how they're treating people by not treating them, but allowing them to live and, you know, allowing them to be who they need to be. That all serves so well to show us exactly the length that Mohanlal's character has gone through, you know, Siddharthan has gone through to be able to find peace. So I don't know if it's ever really made clear the amount of time between, you know, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, but you know, between the slap, I'll just leave it at that until, you know, we probably get to the scene, but the amount of time between the slap and when he ends up here, you know, we do know that like she says he will disappear for months at a time and then come back. You know, there are these kind of toss away lines, but it is led to believe like this is a person of peace who is at war with himself, but also deeply religious. And to answer your question, like, do I like movies about religion? Yes. Am I religious? No. But do I respect and love people's faith? Absolutely. And I mean, these are your original comic book heroes, right? Like, not to be reductive, but like, of course, these stories are incredible. You know, you hear about people performing miracles. That's amazing, right? And I can't help but be sucked in, especially when a movie is showing you something like this. If I had known somebody this passionate about religion who could kind of like bring it down to a personal level for me when I was young, maybe I would be religious. Maybe, you know, and that's why movies get me about religion more, because somebody in 2 hours who can deliver a great speech is going to get me more than somebody who's like, oh, I've been preaching every Sunday and you know what? You should do good. And here's where the money goes. Like,
it's a little different.
Again, not to be reductive. And if you are religious or you have deep faith, I don't mean to offend in any way. I'm just saying that I respect and love it so much that when it is shown to me in a way like the first 45 minutes of this movie do, I kind of sit back and I'm like, of course that exists in the world. And of course the world is a better place for it, you know? And I wish that a character like this exists in real life to be able to make me feel a peace like the Mohanlal character does here for the first 45 minutes that, you know, I may not be able to feel otherwise. Not that I don't do, you know, my own work to, you know, be mindful, meditate, things like that. But spending the amount of time that we did at the beginning is absolutely necessary for you to know, like, this is the stake that we're breaking. Right? So this character's personal stake is, am I willing to dip back into that well of who I was to be able to confront my own past, and what will I do ultimately as a result? And again, I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but like, it is the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Correct.
You know? And because we've upset this apple cart, things are now set in motion that cannot be undone. Right. And it's, if you look at the flow of the movie and like the niece as a character, how unimportant she becomes ultimately. She's not really her in his mind. Right? Like, she's just a stand-in for his wife. Like, and the unimportance of her, to the point that we get that final scene where, you know, we now are back in the vision state, and like, as I consider it now in hindsight, it's so much more fluid and it's so much more like immediately plotted out, because the song that he's singing in the beginning is like all about being peaceful and being able to keep
that's another
peace.
Good.
And then you know, the refrain that he's constantly saying at night is like, who am I to blame for this? Is it the womb that carried me? Is it this? Is it this?
that big song.
Like, he's already telling you. Even though you don't know, you're just chalking it up to maybe mental illness. He's already telling you there's something wrong, you know, and he's warring with it every night, but in his own very quiet, peaceful way.
Correct. No, that was a fantastic breakdown, man. And just to talk on some of those points, the same. I'm basically the same way as you with the religion side of things. Like, I'm not particularly religious, but I do really like religious movies, which I honestly, I'd say rarely see them. To be honest, it's not a big genre. But then when I do watch them and I see the power of religion and what it can do, it always sort of intrigues me. And I'm always sort of captivated by what they have to say. And when you have performances like this and a concept like this, which is also really different with what Mohanlal's character is doing, like having a direct monologue with God, but then talking about all religions, like basically in a church. I found it quite fascinating because I've not seen that aspect of it so much. Like, it's been normally like, this is in Hollywood, it's like this is a Christian movie normally, and that's the religious movie. And I'm guessing in India or like in Malayalam cinema and other industries, it's probably either it's Hindu or it's like maybe Christian from from the Malayalam film industry. But this one it was almost like more spiritual, because he just combines like everything. It's like, okay, we're just, he's talking to all gods and he's reading the Quran, and I think he's saying he's saying praise Allah in like a church in front of Jesus, and it's like, okay, this is, it's a different concept. So I like that. Also, the starting scene, I really liked because you mentioned about the timing and things like that, and just rewatching that scene, I started to think, like, physically, he's such a different person to what he is in the flashbacks as well. Like, I think I remember a scene, and I'm not sure, I don't think I have it teed up. There's one where he's paranoid about his beard not being being trimmed. Like, he walks inside the house, and he's about to walk out, then she feels like a stubble, a slight stubble on his face, which is going to be there, obviously. Like, it's hard to get rid of it completely. And he's like, oh, I'm going to shave again. Like, and now if you look at him physically, he's completely different. He's just let go, so he's completely different. So I'm not sure what the time is like, but he's gone through like a transition period where he's transformed from who he used to be to who he is now.
Yeah, you could see like graying hair and I'm really glad you brought that scene up, because there's also another scene where they spend a good amount of time looking at the back of his head, and you can even see like the hair at the back, and that was part of the reason that when I got on, I was like, oh no, I am unkempt, is because like this stuff with my beard down here, I normally don't have, but this is a character who toward the end or toward the beginning of the movie has these things and is so adamant about not having them, and I think it's obsessive compulsive disorder is what he would be classified as, but that maybe they didn't have that, vernacular in 1992, or they didn't want to classify it as that, but it is, it was really cool to like backpedal it. And as we continue to talk, I keep backpedaling it. And I'm like, man, it really like, we've discussed this plenty of times in the past where like, wow, one thing that the Malayalam film industry does so extraordinarily well is like, there are no loose threads, everything is kind of picked up along the way. And this movie really masterfully plotted itself out from the very beginning to tee you up. Like, it's all here. You just don't know what the big thing is in the room.
Correct. Let's jump on to the next one, man. So this was the flashback. The first.
See, this is what I wanted a little bit more of, or like a better resolution to this.
Yeah.
ചൂടുള്ള കഞ്ഞിയും നാരായണൻ കുട്ടിയോടൊപ്പം ഒറ്റപ്പായിൽ ഉറക്കവും. ഒരു ദിവസം നിലവിളിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ഓടി വന്ന ഗോപാലൻ ചേട്ടൻ,
white shirt, red tie,
കാലിൽ വീണ് കിടന്ന് കരഞ്ഞു.
See, but that again, like I wanted a little bit more resolution about that, because why would you continue to wear that same outfit if it was indicative of the childhood that you hate?
കറുത്ത കോട്ടിട്ട എന്റെ അച്ഛൻ ഞാൻ കാണെ എന്റെ ഗോപാലൻ ചേട്ടനെ പോലീസിൽ ഏൽപ്പിച്ചു. എന്നെ രക്ഷിക്കണം, എന്റെ കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങൾക്ക് ആരുമില്ല, എന്നെ രക്ഷിക്കണം. ഗോപാലൻ ചേട്ടനെ തൂക്കി കൊന്നു എന്റെ അച്ഛൻ.
Damn, it's got so dark.
Yeah.
My God, it's.
കുഞ്ഞു പെങ്ങളെയും വിഷം കുടിപ്പിച്ചു കൊന്നു എന്റെ അച്ഛൻ. ന്യായാധിപൻ തല്ലി തകർത്തു ഞാൻ എന്റെ അച്ഛന്റെ കോടതി.
This part, I was like, "Oh, we got dark."
This one was.
ഞാൻ എന്റെ അച്ഛനെ തൂക്കി കൊന്നു.
Oh my goodness.
So see, right there, okay, all of that we're talking about, getting a little bit of resolution about that. You know how we could have tied it in, or how would have been satisfying to me? We could have talked about the fact that right then he felt like he had lost so much control, because he's also saying in those tapes, I hate everybody, but he doesn't hate his wife.
Yep.
He doesn't hate his wife. He wants her to be there. We see her constantly throughout the rest of the movie, even after she's dead. So he wants her to be there. Yep. He could have simply said, like, I need you to be around because I lost these people, or I needed her to be around because I lost these people, and that's why I didn't want to let her go, or we could have had another scene where he, as the boy, is, talking to the dead people in the way that he does to Reggie later on, to kind of tee us off to the fact that like it's always been there, it's been brewing in the background. Like I need to have control of something, because his parents obviously didn't give him that modicum of control. So that's my only real gripe with the movie.
Yeah,
I kept thinking about that. Oh, and another small one where it's like, if you kill somebody and you're saying that you killed somebody when you're over the corpse of your dead wife, even though you didn't kill her. But if you're saying you killed somebody while you're standing over the corpse of your dead wife, you're probably going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And the fact that he ended up in the institution is another thing where it'd be like, we could have had like 2 lines in there to be like, well, he was ruled, he was ruled to have mental deficiencies when he went in front of the court or something like that.
Yeah.
That explained how he's out there, because he admitted it to a whole bunch of people.
Definitely no. There was, I would say, the small things like that. I wouldn't say I was bothered by it. Like, if I really think about it, like, would it have made the movie better? Maybe not. I don't know, but I wasn't too bothered by that aspect.
That's looking at it from a 2024 lens. Like
that's true.
A 1992 lens, I'm sure, totally different. But looking at it from a 2024 lens, I was like, wait a minute.
You just admitted something here. This is sketchy. But in terms of, like, I guess this is interesting. I really liked it a lot because, the flashback one, because I do agree with you. Yes, they could have probably expanded on this a bit more. But again, I also did like the fact this movie was 2 hours, like, on the dot. Like, I think I'm happy they didn't make this 2 hours 20, 2 hours 15, nothing. 2 hours. It felt really tight. So I feel like maybe there's another cut of this where there is more of the stuff she talked about and exploring his childhood and his relationship with his parents. But maybe they're just like, no, we want to keep this tight, keep it sharp, keep it to the point, and they put more scenes with the wife, which they did a lot of. They really explored that relationship, like, from end to end. They really spent a lot of time.
Another thing I was really shocked by. I did not know we were going to get that much with the wife. Like, I thought for sure.
That's what I think
we would just only learn about her as he's talking to the niece.
Yeah. It's a whole start to end relationship, like, from before they're married to basically her death. So it's all the way through. But I did like how, like, this was a good way because I'm not the biggest fan of exposition, and that's what this is. It's kind of an exposition dump. But I did like how it had impact. And it might have been that last scene with him just holding the
that effigy was rough.
Yeah, the effigy that was a rough look. Pretty powerful. The 3 bodies on the floor, like, good imagery, very powerful imagery right there, and the way it's shot. And even just the voiceover, there's minimal dialogue in that whole sequence. It's more just Mohanlal's voice, which is like kind of like he's like speaking like he's can't really say too much, or like he can't really, really propel his voice that much. Like, it seems like he's stuck in a trance, because I think he is right in that scene. So he's projecting that well. So it works well as just like a piece on its own, I think. So it works. I thought it did a pretty good job of establishing the childhood trauma that he's been through. Could they have explored that a little bit more throughout the movie? Probably, but I think as a standalone, this worked fine. I thought it was a good one. And yeah, it helped to really shift that tone to being like, okay, we're not in a community anymore where everything is getting better. We're going to some dark places. And this is the start of that. Like, this was the first really dark thing that happened. And maybe one of the most darkest things that happened throughout the movie. But yeah, it's filled with some really, really bad moments.
I completely agree. Again, all those things that I was talking about were just minor nitpicks from that 2024 lens, but like you said, it does masterfully kind of switch gears for us. It works so well to just be that, like, and if she goes and gets tapes, and if her aunt tells her to go and get the real story, that it's probably not pretty, because if it was, she just would have told her real quick, be like, he just fell down a mountain and he bonked his head, like it's not a simple story like that. Right. And I was not prepared for the level of depravity that he had been a party to. Especially with some of the scenes that I think you're going to get to a little bit later on, because there was one that really stuck with me where it reminded me almost of like Pet Sematary, because there are some scenes in that movie that are haunting, where the wife in that movie is talking about what her sister, who had like cerebral palsy, and how she like didn't help her one day, and how that kind of haunted her, and what he does a little bit later on got me in that same way where I was like, woof, that's rough.
Yeah, pretty tough, man. But let's continue on, man. What's the next one here?
ഒരു കഷ്ണം വെള്ളരിക്ക, ഒരു ഗ്ലാസ് പാൽ, ഒരു ബൗൾ കോൺഫ്ലേക്സ്.
I adored her performance.
Oh, she was
spectacular.
Yeah.
ഈ ക്യാരറ്റും കാബേജും ഒക്കെയോ? ഞാനെന്താ മുയലാണോ?
And I'm glad they gave her such an interesting character as well. Like, she was somebody that doesn't really take his crap.
And you see these scenes after you see, Siddharthan kind of walking through the woods, and he's like, and he has those dual visions, right? So like some of the scenes of them coming down the stairs where he's got the niece, in place of her, instead of her, and like they're switching out the actors,
Yes.
And that kind of leads you to believe it was an idyllic life, right? Like
There was harmony.
Yeah, and this version of it is so much more compelling.
നമ്മൾ എന്തിനാ പാട്ട് കേൾക്കുന്നത്? അത് മാത്രമല്ല, പാട്ട് കേൾക്കുന്നതിനും ആഹാരം കഴിക്കുന്നതിനും വ്യായാമം ചെയ്യുന്നതിനും ഉറങ്ങുന്നതിനും ഉണരുന്നതിനും ഒക്കെ ഓരോ ചിട്ടയുണ്ട്. ശുദ്ധ സംഗീതം കേട്ട് ഉറക്കത്തിലേക്ക് പോയാൽ ഉണരുമ്പോൾ ഫ്രഷ് ആയിരിക്കും മനസ്സ്.
It's just really, I guess, I don't know if the word strange is right, but there's something compelling about this relationship, and it works somehow. And it's because she has this, she's a legendary actress. Like she's one that's, her name is Urvashi, and she's just one of the best there is. Like she's really, really good. So yeah,
easy to see why she was so and especially the turns from her in these scenes versus the ones he imagines.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, and we have some of those teed up too. So yeah, we're going to get into that one. But I do like this relationship because it is peculiar, if you want to put it that way. Because yes, she listens to whatever he has to say, and he obviously has a lot of stuff going on with sort of how he is. But she sort of there's this balance that she really plays really well. I think, it's kind of like she doesn't put up for his crap, but she does enough to like let him be okay as well. So it's a really delicate game to play, and she does it perfectly. So one, the performance is spectacular, but the writing is also making this character that's so interesting. It's not just a yes, I'll do whatever you want kind of wife, or like no, I'm not going to do anything you want. It's has this sort of, I guess, this complexity, and this it's a dynamic character, which I really appreciated. And I brought every scene with these two together, which is so good. Whether it was the darker times, which happened later on, or before they got married, or while they were married. Like there's always a level of interest, and that's why this movie was so easy to watch. I felt like it was such an easy movie to watch. Like it was so entertaining, engaging. Something was always interesting. There's going to be a turn here, there's going to be a twist here, but also just these kind of scenes with just them two being together. Was just fun to watch. I just enjoyed their dynamic, and to see how it goes. It's interesting because like. I do want to ask this question to the audience, because like I'm starting to notice this movie's from 1992. So, and I know like I was thinking of this, and like in the 90s, I know Hollywood went through this period where I think it was the 90s, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you will have a good idea about this. But I think in the 90s and early 2000s, we had a lot of movies from Hollywood that would explore like inner conflict. Like it would be more about that, because the 80s was more about the foreign warrior, Russia, like World War, like there's a lot of that stuff I think back then. But I think in like the 90s and early 2000s, they were more around self-identity, like, someone goes through like a mental crisis or something like that. I'm starting to notice that a little bit in Malayalam cinema too, to be honest, because I look back and I looked at some of the movies I've seen, and unfortunately you've not seen any of these ones, but there's another movie called Butta Kannadi, which is a Mammootty movie where he goes to, it's again set up in a kind of similar way, where he has a whole life and then something happens. He loses, I think, his daughter or something like that. And then he goes to prison, and he has like a shattering experience where he starts seeing things and he starts imagining scenarios similar to what we have here. Like he's delusional. There's another movie called Kiridam, which is a Mohanlal movie, which is probably one of my favorite movies I think I've seen, like across the board. Like it's such a good movie. But again, it's to do with this identity of self and what happens after a traumatic situation. You lose yourself. Again, another one that we have seen that we might talk a little bit about was Manish Tatare. That was in 1993. And that was, again, against this duality of self, right? Like, who are you? There's two versions of this character. Is a possession, is a mental health. But all these movies, they all have something to do with mental health. And they all play off this part. Tanmatra was a little bit later, but again, 2005, that was pointed towards a specific condition. But again, it is a sport. So I'm just fascinated to know in the audience, was this a time when these movies were coming out? Like, was this the focus during that time? Because I'm starting to sense that more and more the movies I see from the 90s, they seem to explore this theme a lot. And it seemed like it was a bit similar in Hollywood too. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Please let us know. And like what you said about the actress and the actor, couldn't agree more. Like I couldn't have said it better myself. I have nothing to add, but please let us know, because that was a huge thing in Hollywood around that time. Definitely looking at the psychosis and like how people could play as a different person and how they could present in one way, but not really present in another way. And like, that was another thing we had briefly discussed before we got on, is like, hypnosis doesn't really work that way. You're not going to divulge a whole bunch of information you don't want to. Essentially, it's just like putting people into a meditative state and, making them more comfortable with saying things that they may not have been comfortable saying before. You're not going to divulge all of your life's dirty secrets, But again, That's 1992. So, we were working with what we had. But Hollywood did the exact same thing. I could think of dozens of movies where they would be like, "Ooh, and we had this mental deficiency, which led to this behavior." And it's like, we know a lot more about it now. But it was a very popular theme, like therapy. Specifically in the 90s was like, every therapist was like, "And what about that? And what about that?" Where now a therapist is essentially like, "Okay, we're going to help you figure out how to set some boundaries and maybe take some time for yourself." Like they just listen. That's what they really do. They're not pushing you into revealing your secret identity. But yes, please let us know. Was that a phenomenon in Malayalam cinema at the time too?
Would love to know. Yeah. Let's get on to the next one, but. Oof, okay, this is when we start going downhill.
Yeah, that scene of him in the window.
This one, there are some iconic scenes in this movie. Like this one is. Boy, but boring book.
എന്താ ഇത് സിദ്ധാർത്ഥൻ? വാട്ട്സ് യുവർ പ്രോബ്ലം? എനിക്കൊന്നും മനസ്സിലാവുന്നില്ല.
എനിക്കെല്ലാം മനസ്സിലാവുന്നുണ്ട്.
The performance for Mohanlal. I mean, it's second nature now, but. I'll kill you. A short one, but I just wanted to sort of see that one mostly for that scene with the window. And I mean, the other guy that's there, Suresh Gopi, legendary actor. I just mentioned Mani Chitratare. He's the other guy in Mani Chitratare.
Yep.
Yeah, this movie is packed with performances, packed with actors. This is like a huge movie. I'm surprised that this movie isn't more popular and we just didn't know about it. Like, was this a mega hit? I'm starting to think, like, was it just one that crept up on us and we just didn't know? Again, guys, let us know.
Well, especially because it's from that same era. Like, I don't have much to say about the scene that the scene doesn't really say about itself, but it does seem like it really was kind of that time where you're looking at, psychosis as a theme, and really, really well acted and really, really well laid out and paced out to the point that it's not like right in your face,
Yes.
A very funny example of a movie like that is like Me, Myself, and Irene here in the United States, where like, had somebody with split personality disorder, the way that this laid it out and played it out is what I think I'm most fascinated by. The fact that it took its time and continued to do so all the way up until the end. Like, that really stuck with me as just being like, whoa, they really know what they're doing.
I agree. The pacing of this movie and the structure of this movie was just, perfect. It was so good. It's hard for me to floor it because you might want to criticize the first 40 minutes as a bit boring, or a bit slow if you want to put it.
Necessary.
But no, it's so necessary for the outcome and even the conclusion of what we get. To go back to that world after all of this makes so much sense. I'm so glad this movie is not linear in that way, but it just works so well. So yeah, it's fantastic. Nothing but praise for this movie, to be honest. It's really good. Enjoyed a lot about it, but we have to talk about Urvashi. Fantastic. Mohanlal's performance, the multifaceted performance of this one.
Oh yeah.
Like how many hats he has to wear, from the Swamiji at the start to playing like a character that's going through like a decline or like going through something, dealing with his mental illness. Yeah, it's a sight to behold, and he can do all. We've seen him do all this stuff like before. We've seen so many Mohanlal movies now. We've seen bits of it, but just the fact that he can balance so much and put on different hats at different times, it's fascinating. Like, I think more than other movies we have seen. If I'm thinking of the last movie we watched, which was Spirit, which seemed like he was more one tone. I mean, it was fantastic again, but it definitely wasn't as diverse as this. Like, he had some moments here and there, but this is something else. Like, it's just it's a pretty incredible performance.
I mean, literally, like, look at it from in regard with the Spirit. Pretty much the only like real thick acting he had to do was when he was drunk, or like when he was going to have a revelatory moment. But here, we have a character who doesn't drink alcohol. We have a character who doesn't even drink tea. We have a character who doesn't even drink, like coffee, like nothing. He's just drinking milk. And the fact that it's like that deeply rooted of a psychosis and is kind of rolling out and like is able to find peace, but desperately seeks that control, and then is able to kind of keep a lid on it. And there's also that scene where he swipes the chess pieces off off the table when he thinks that, you know, the niece has gone with somebody else, and like concocting these elaborate stories and these elaborate fantasies in his head. And like, that's when you really start to feel for this character. And it was probably my favorite acting performance I've seen of his yet, because he gets to wear all those different hats.
I think so too.
And because he's equally believable of the 3 iterations that we see him as, you know, very, very cool to watch this and know, like,
watch him do that.
Oh, like in the compounding, you know, everybody telling us he's the complete actor. Yes, of course. Right. But like, you see a movie like this and you know immediately why. Oh yeah.
That's why they say it.
That's why they say it.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's phenomenal, man. It's fantastic. Let's get on to the next one. I want to include this for some of the cinematography and some of the stuff they did here, which I really enjoyed.
Excellent work.
Yeah. This is 1992, but I mean, it's fantastically shot. The paranoia. The footsteps. Ugh. I just love the stillness as well. Like nothing's moving. This is the scene that made me put this movie on the list.
So now, okay, so I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think this is like his own personal kind of like, all right, I'm breaking a little bit? Is that the way you read this? Because that was the way, like, after having watched it, I was like, all right, I think that may be the moment where he's like, no, I get to decide what is happening in my head.
Yes. No. That is an expression, man. Whew. Chills. Yeah, he's going places.
Yeah, that's the way I read it.
Yeah.
Like, I get to choose what's actually happening.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to cover that what you were saying, but I just wanted to just pull that scene first. But no, you are exactly right. I do think that's a good point. Like, it is something. Like, I guess this one was a little like I felt like this was like a little art housey, like the way they sort of presented this. Like, it's taken us some places, but I think the point what they were trying to show us is something is breaking in there, like, you know, and this is the, I guess, representation of that, and like breaking in a way that's becoming more distorted. But the way his expression is, he's embracing it. Like, you know, he's like, yes, like, let me go to this. This is my world now. Like, he's being lured by it in a way with the music and everything. It feels like it's almost like a trap. Like, come to me. Like, you know, like, this is what's happening here. So yeah, I definitely do agree with your take. Like, that is like the point where it completely breaks, because he's hearing voices which he wasn't hearing before. Like, these elements, because we said before he had a childhood trauma thing, and if they wanted to explore some of that earlier, they could have done that with, you know, a repetition. Like, you know, he hears voices every now and then for some time. They could have done that to really hone that in, to say that yes, he's been dealing with this from the past as well. But this was a point where I think in this movie it's like something's happened to him traumatic, and it's getting to the point where it's really starting to shatter. And this is the way they show it. I just love the presentation and the depiction of it, because again, it caught you off guard, but it was such a good scene by itself that you just have to stop and be like, what is going on here? And the way it cuts, the way it stops, and even then watching it again, where it just stops at the last minute, completely still, just seeing these lights and what he's looking at with the fan twirling. Again, innovative technology, no CGI in this, right? It's just a projector probably facing up to the roof, the lighting, the vignetting that they've done. That might be some post-production stuff, but there's minimal post-production. It's mostly just shooting it as it is.
In camera,
That's the 90s and 2000s. That's the charm it has. It's just, there's less editing, less post-production, no CGI. Basically, it's just all, you know, basically, you know, whatever you can do physically, that's what you can do, and that's what you get. And you get stuff like this, and you're like, wow, that is impressive.
Yeah, reading it that way, and I like that it kind of doesn't hold you by the hand. You know, I like that we can actually have that discussion. You know, is this the way that you read it? Because a lot of movies, especially made now in 2024, are going to be like, nah, no, we'll give you a little bit more. Like a movie made today might like cut that scene with some of the stuff that had occurred in his past. You know, like you might see him as a kid after Gotapan had died, and you might see him doing the same thing there. Like, I like that it doesn't hold you by the hand. That's the way that I read it.
No,
And
I love
of course, that's the way the sequence of events plays out, right? Because he only gets more depraved from there.
Yes.
But yeah, it was very cool. And especially like him running to the hospital and kind of staying there. And it doesn't, the way I first imagined it was that he felt guilty, but it's not that he feels guilty. He feels like that sense of longing to be with her.
Yes.
It's not guilt. It's that he only knows to sleep next to her.
Correct.
You know, and that was really cool to see also. Like the fact that it is absolutely rooted in like, no, you are. And again, I don't want to spoil the end of the movie if you haven't seen it, but like, no, I am here for you. You're the only thing I've ever cared about. You're the only thing I ever loved. And that's again, going back to that kind of that hypnosis scene where it would just be like, when he says, I hate everybody, like we could have slipped in like, with the exception of one person, you know, because he even says in those his hypnosis tapes, like it was a harmony, it was this whole love. Like
he does, yes.
So that is just the one thing that keeps grinding me just a tiny bit. But yes, I'm glad you put this scene in there.
Yeah, no, it was one that I had to include, but there's some pretty more epic performances coming up towards here now. It gets really good.
Oh yeah.
അവിടെ ജോലി ചെയ്തതിന് കുട്ടി സാഹിബ് കാശും എല്ലാം കൊടുത്തിരുന്നു.
ഓ അങ്ങനെ ഒന്നുമില്ല. സാറിന്റെ പിറന്നാളിന് ഒരു സമ്മാനം വാങ്ങണമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. ഞാൻ വാങ്ങിച്ചു കൊടുത്തു.
Boy. Damn, man. Just snaps.
ക്ഷമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറവളെ. ഞാനിതൊന്നും അറിഞ്ഞിരുന്നില്ല. നീ എന്നോടൊന്നും പറഞ്ഞിരുന്നില്ലല്ലോ. മാപ്പ് മോളെ. ക്ഷമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറവളെ. ഇട്ടോട് ക്ഷമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറ. മാപ്പ് മോളെ. ഇട്ടോട് ക്ഷമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറ. ഇട്ടോട് ക്ഷമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറവളെ. ഇട്ടോട് ക്ഷമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറ.
There we go.
Man. The transformation from her is just
it's so incredible.
Yeah.
And like that's the version of her that he always wanted her to be, and like just the kind of the three-dimensional chess that you have to play to be able to tell this story so that it mostly comes from his mind, and outside observers looking at it from a skewed angle is really impressive.
It really is.
I am sorry. I am sorry. എനിക്ക് മോളെ എന്നിട്ട് ഡ്രസ്സ് മാറ്. എനിക്ക് നമുക്ക് വീട്ടിൽ പോവാം. ഇനി ഇട്ടനെ അടിക്കത്തേ ഇല്ല. ഡ്രസ്സ് മാറ്, നമുക്ക് വീട്ടിൽ പോവാം. എനിക്ക് ഡോക്ടർ എന്റെ രഞ്ജിനിക്കെല്ലാം ഭേദമായി. താങ്ക് യു ഡോക്ടർ. താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച് സിസ്റ്റർ. താങ്ക് യു. വേഗം ബില്ല് റെഡിയാക്കൂ. ഞാൻ രഞ്ജിനെ വീട്ടിൽ കൊണ്ടുപോവാ. എനിക്ക് ഞാൻ കുറച്ച് ചായ വാങ്ങിച്ചോണ്ടിരാം. ഇപ്പോൾ ചായ കുടിക്കുള്ളൂ. സിസ്റ്റർ എളുപ്പം ബില്ല് റെഡിയാക്കണം. ഞാൻ രഞ്ജിനെ വീട്ടിൽ കൊണ്ടുപോവാണ്. ഓക്കേ.
It's heartbreaking and haunting at the same time. It's such a good combination. And again, the way that they've shot this, the way they presented this, the contrast between, you know, what he's seeing, then they come inside and he's still in that world. He's still seeing things like that, but these people from the outside don't see it like that anymore. And that's what the reality is. But yeah, he's in a different world altogether. Fantastic, man. Again, I just want to show that scene mostly just for that Urvashi's performance, because oh my goodness, like wow,
it's spectacular. Like Mohanlal is great, right? But it's almost easy to be the one that is a little bit more unhinged. You know, like I remember being in plays when I was in high school, and everybody wanted to be the villain because the villain gets to have more fun. You know, it's a lot harder to be the heroic or kind of sympathetic figure. But her performance in all of those scenes where she's just existing in his mind, spectacular. I was hooked. At the moment the movie went to that, I was like, okay, I had been enjoying it previously,
but then
I was in. Then I was in.
Same. Sam, it just hit another level when that happened. I was like, whoa, okay, we're going some places with this. And it just changed so dramatically. Honestly, her performance to me is probably one of the, again, we keep mentioning this movie. I don't know why, but maybe there are some commonalities. But Mani Chitwatare, again, we had a fantastic transformation of Shobana's character, whose name I forget now. But her character was also doing the same kind of thing, playing this dual character. And that was sensational. Where she saw the show. I don't know if Urvashi saw the show from this one, because she probably didn't have enough screen time in that particular mode, maybe, but it was pretty damn close. She was
stole it
so
from me.
good. Yeah,
stole it from me. Like everything else about the movie kind of fell to the wayside. And again, I think it is that like the outside observer looking at this story. You know, of course, Mohanlal is the character we're following because eventually, at a certain point, she's departed. But without her performance being the person that exists in his mind,
it'd be a different
we don't
movie.
get the ultimate character decisions that he makes.
Right.
And I think I was so taken by it and so in love with it that I would just sit up anytime that she was inhabiting that particular version of her character. And I liked her the entire time that she was on screen, but it really got me.
No, definitely, man. It's pretty sensational. Let's jump on to the next one. Okay, this is just an extension of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was telling you earlier about that scene in that cemetery, this was the one that really got me. Because imagine being any of the people working in that hospital and walking in to see this.
And they tease a little bit at the end of the scene.
And the camera work here. Like, that's the other magic trick about this movie is that it is... The scenes and the sets are all so relatively simple. You know, you've got a beautiful nature, right? When you actually get to the facility that everybody lives in. But like, this is a relatively simple set. So how do you make it wonderful? Well, you dim the lights and you spin around people.
That is just chilling. That is, my God, that is chilling. She also had a pretty important role as well. Again, just a small character had such a big impact. Similar to the captain, I feel like her role is.
Yeah. And again, very sympathetic character. Like somebody that you kind of really... You just want to see good things happen to. You know, like understanding everything that has happened to her. So... when she starts to get help and they start to kind of like live this beautiful life together, and you can even see in like a small depraved way, like, maybe you can just pretend to be the wife, you know? Yes. And you want that to succeed and you want it to happen. But then when that turn hits, ooh.
Definitely, no, she's just basically an innocent victim in the whole plot, I guess, which is the saddest part about it. But yeah, again, just another great performance from her as well. I felt like she also did a great job of playing that sympathetic character. But yeah, fantastic. Well, I think I have one scene tied up here. One scene, and this is a longish one. But yeah, this will be a good one.
Oh.
My God. And again, that symbolism or the repetition with the tie choking her to death, the same way the father happened. Oh.
Those unblinking eyes, like so stillness. Intense and focused.
It's incredible.
വിമലയും കൂട്ടി ബീച്ചിൽ പോവുക. നമ്മൾ കല്യാണം കഴിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നു. ഇതാണ് വരണമാല. എന്റെ കഴുത്തിലിട്ട്. ഇനി ഞാൻ തന്റെ കഴുത്തിലിടാം.
And the speed at which this is done,
it's haunting. And like, again, those beautiful big establishing shots, like letting you know that anybody could see this. Correct. And he doesn't care.
Wow, he's almost having fun with it.
And like he's dancing away, you know.
Yeah. His reality is completely distorted. Oh, the pause on the shot. Oh, they're both dead.
doctor.
This is what you're talking about.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. Like, if you're gonna...
Please. Come on.
Sorry.
Come on.
Ranjini is dead. Ranjini marichu.
No. You're a fool, doctor. I will doctor him patichu. Enne paticha ole. She's a naughty girl. She cannot die. She's not dead.
Baba. Ranjini. Siddhartha.
Ranjini. ഞാൻ അവളെ കൊന്നു. നീ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ കഴുത്തി കുരുക്കിട്ട് ഞെക്കി കൊന്നു. ആരെങ്കിലും അറിയുന്നതിന് നമുക്ക് അവിടെ വീട്ടിൽ പോവാം.
Your wife is dead.
No, doctor. അവൾ നമ്മളെ പറ്റിക്കുക. അവൾ ഇവിടെ എവിടെയോ ഒളിച്ചിരിപ്പുണ്ട്. ഞാനിപ്പോ പിടിച്ചോണ്ടിരാം. രഞ്ജിനി. രഞ്ജിനി.
My God.
Yeah, and that's sort of like frolic that it goes on through the rest of the hospital until he's eventually caught. And that's the only reason that like what I've been talking about since the very beginning kind of sticks with me a little more is like a whole bunch of people stopped him in that hospital. So he kept saying these things and that was where I was just like, okay, maybe a little bit of resolution on that because he did, murder a woman and he didn't like dump her in the sea. He just has her there on the rock. But again, put all that aside for the emotional emphasis of where the movie is really sitting, which is just the decline of this person, right?
Correct.
And in that way, it succeeds top marks.
Correct. No, I absolutely loved it. And again, the more I sort of watch this with these sort of reactions, you just get to appreciate how well this is shot, I think. Because, I think I might have taken that for a little bit of granted because I was so wrapped up in the story and how well that was done and the performances. But just, the as you said before, with the scene with Urvashi and then Mohanlal, just the way it's sort of shot with half the face and you just see one eye completely still with the earring just moving a little bit.
Just a tiny bit.
Just the way the dialogue delivery is so good. It just bit by bit by bit.
And he moves his head a little bit, like letting you know that he's
right?
like he's not looking at her because she's not really there. Like, oh.
Yeah, and with Mohanlal, like if you just take screenshots of Mohanlal's face throughout this movie, you can tell a completely different character because his face is so expressive. But we see him at the start where he's somebody else. We see him when he's Swamiji is completely different. We see him at this scene particularly at the breaking point or the worst point probably, I think, where he's just completely just unraveled and you just see someone completely different. The way he's looking, completely still, and you have those two contrasting with each other. Oh, it's spectacular. Yeah, that would probably be the climax of the movie. I think from here it sort of takes a different turn, which we'll sort of react to and sort of wrap things up. But yeah, it's just something completely different, man. So all credit to this movie, man.
I really can't. Other than like, I could extol the virtues of like, man, the lighting is spectacular and all the production is great. Yeah. And what is really cool about this movie is I wasn't focused, just like you mentioned. I wasn't focused much on that until we started doing some of the rewatch and really looking at the establishing, because when you're looking at that wide eye, then that's our eye. Right? We're being brought into this as just casual observers. So when we get that peek into his mind with those dimmed lights, it's really, really, really striking. And it works to pull you into that world and remind you that like, no, this is somebody that's really gone through something and really has done something terrible. So,
and again,
all of it is constructed so well to serve watching this person fall from, and not really even fall from grace, but like, tragically fall into the destiny they were bred into, kind of. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Yeah. It's a sad tale. But even again, when you were sort of talking about how they dim the lights and stuff, such simple techniques, right? Like in today's age, it would have definitely been like chuck a black and white filter, put an overlay on it, like change the aspect ratio.
We've got all kinds of cool stuff, like happening in the background.
Right. It's like, no, just dim the lights a little bit, focus on the performances. And that's what I loved about these movies, to be honest. It just let the performances just, it's like, hey, you can do what you do. Urvashi, Mohanlal, go out there, do what you have to do. They do it and look at the result. Something phenomenal. No, we'll wrap things up with this final scene too.
ചെയ്തതെല്ലാം രഞ്ജിനിക്ക് വേണ്ടി, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എനിക്ക് വേണ്ടി. ക്ലോറോഫോം മുൾപടർപ്പിലും ഷോക്കേറ്റ് ചിതറിയ തലച്ചോറിൻ തരികളിൽ വരെ രഞ്ജിനി.
Okay. So he did go through something.
Yeah.
മറക്കാൻ ശീലിപ്പിച്ചു.
Yeah, I think this is the gaps where
യാത്രക്കിടയിൽ വന്നു പെട്ടതാണ് ഈ സെറ്റിൽമെന്റിൽ. ഇവിടുത്തെ സ്നേഹത്തിൽ ആശ്വാസം കിട്ടിയിരുന്നില്ലെങ്കിലും വഴിമാറ്റാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞു മനസ്സിനെ. നിന്നെ കാണുന്നത് വരെ മിരിയാന. You know who you are to me? രഞ്ജിനി, എന്റെ രഞ്ജിനി, ഇനിയും ജീവിച്ചു മതിയാകാത്ത എന്റെ കൊച്ചു വീട്ടിലെ രഞ്ജിനി. എന്നെ കാണാൻ കഴിയുന്നില്ല നിനക്ക്. I need your love, Mariana. I want you.
പോകട്ടെ സ്വാമി, സമയമേറെയായി.
യാത്ര പറയാ എന്നോടല്ലേ?
അതല്ല, കൊച്ചുമ്മ അവിടെ.
That single tear.
It just shows you how delicate his mind is, right? Like, it's just wow. And that's what the nun's role is so important too. Like, she was like, she understood him, I guess, better than anybody else, to be like, anything could happen. So even though I don't, does she start to fall in love with him or something like that? Like, there's some things like that. They had the whole song together, but then she's getting married at the end. So I don't exactly know what happened between that either.
Well, I think that was the magic trick of the movie, is that she was just observing him, but it was showing you through his lens. It looks like, he's falling in love with her. Like, and she's worried about it. The nun is, she's worried that it's becoming a little bit more romantic, but like she's just manipulating him to be able to, use him for a study.
Correct.
And all of this is more of a concoction in his mind, right? So when he's saying you're Renjini, like, it's the exact same thing. But I did just notice a really cool thing. Like, I wonder if that tipping point happened, the real tipping point where he started to fall in love with her and really see her like that. Because at one point she grabs the books and takes them from there, and she's like, I put them back because I was bored. And I think, he saw the boring book,
then, right? Yes.
And I think that may be one of those things. And another one of those just like really smart, clever things that the movie kind of, sets you up with, where you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I totally forgot about that,
Correct.
Really, really spectacular work.
Yeah.
Really, really well done. Because the weakest part of the movie for me was her, not that she wasn't a good performer or anything. It's just that, like, she is just there to be our entry point as the audience.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Pretty much.
She is only there.
How she gets us in. She gets us in, and because she's not even doing the narration at the end, right? It's Mohanlal's narration. So she's just observing it. And I guess I do think that she has a pretty big impact though in just rewatching it. I think that maybe, because I guess we'll see this last scene, which is, the final scene essentially. But yeah, I feel like she has a part to play with his uncoiling. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So let's watch this last one. Ooh. The voices. Now I can't tell if she's been gone the whole time or she's just come back now.
ഞാൻ വിമലയിൽ നിന്നെ കണ്ടു. പിന്നെ അവളെ കൊല്ലാൻ നീയല്ലേ എന്നോട് പറഞ്ഞത്? നീ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ഞാൻ അവളെ കൊന്നു. ആ വിവരം പറയാൻ ആശുപത്രിയിൽ ഓടിയെത്തിയ എന്നെ വീണ്ടും നീ പറ്റിച്ചതുകൊണ്ടല്ലേ അവർ പിടിച്ചു കെട്ടി ഭ്രാന്തനാക്കിയത്? എന്റെ മനസ്സിന്റെ മുമ്പിൽ ഞാൻ കണ്ടവരിലെല്ലാം നീയായിരുന്നു. മനസ്സിനെ നിർബന്ധിപ്പിച്ച് ഭക്തിയുടെ ഈ കാവി പുതപ്പിനുള്ളിൽ ഒളിപ്പിച്ചു. ശാന്തി തേടി അലഞ്ഞു. അങ്ങനെ ഇവിടെ എത്തി. ഈ അന്തരീക്ഷത്തിൽ ആശ്വാസം കെട്ടി തുടങ്ങിയപ്പോഴാണ് മെരിയാനയുടെ രൂപത്തിൽ വീണ്ടും നീ എന്നെ പറ്റിക്കാൻ വന്നത്. ഇങ്ങനെ പറ്റിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി ഞാൻ എന്ത് തെറ്റാ മോളെ ചെയ്തത്? എന്റെ എല്ലാ സ്വപ്നങ്ങളും നീയായിരുന്നു. നീയും നമ്മുടെ കൊച്ചു വീടും. ഇനി എന്നെ വിട്ടു പോകരുത് മോളെ. വിട്ടൽ താങ്ങാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ഇനി എന്നെ പറ്റിക്കരുത്.
ഇല്ലട്ടാ, ഇനി ഞാൻ ഇട്ടനെ വിട്ടെങ്ങും പോകില്ല.
Oh man.
So especially on the rewatch here, I think that is essentially him saying to the audience, like, I've never been able to be at peace. I've never been able to be at peace without control. And you're like, essentially the version of her that he concocts in his mind is his peace. And the only way to get that is to join her and be the thing that he concocted for himself in his own mind. Right.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that. I think that is a really fantastic way to like make this character who by all rights we should all hate as an audience still be sympathetic.
No, definitely. You're definitely very sympathetic towards him at the end, and your heart's breaking for him. That's sort of what he's going through and the journey he's gone on to where he is, despite everything he's done, become a man of faith and do everything. It's all just to protect himself or to keep himself sane, essentially, because he just sees her everywhere. So I'm not sure because I didn't explore too much. That's why I was asking, was she not, like, had he blocked her off all the time?
I think so. Yeah, I think
it was a reporter.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Mariana, she sort of helped to bring him back by these little things we talked about, by him, the chess games, like the repetition that they kept having, the books that you mentioned, him learning more about her, I guess, and just triggering that because he sees every woman that he has an attraction to becomes like her again, like his his late wife. So I think it triggered that, and again, this ending is basically like she's back. So he's able to contain that, but now after everything that's happened, because this is the point where he's lost her, like she's married somebody else, the reporter. So he's at the point where everything's gone, and she's come back now. So this is the ending, saying that it's a strange ending because it's not like a happy ending, it's not a sad ending. It's not even like open-ended. It's just, I don't even know what to feel about it. It's just like, I guess I'm kind of glad he's with somebody, but it's not reality. So it's kind of like, should we be upset about that it's distorted like this, that he's going to go back to his old ways, or is he better now from where he was before? I don't know. It's such I feel like it's open-ended.
I think it's just melancholy, like he's
that's the best word
because they start walking away and there's that storm going on. Like I think he's just walking toward his death, right? Like that's the way I read it, is like he knows the only way that he can have this is that this has now got to stop, right? Like she'll never leave me again because I won't be here. I'll be with her.
Correct. Yeah, that's the best way to put it, which is, and again, I like how it treats the audience with perspective, unless you explore that and talk about it. It just show him walking off a cliff or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
you don't see him, dangling from a red tie or something
like that. No, we have to sort of put that together, and through discussion and through watching it again, I think really hones that in even more for me, because I've just heard him, listen to him again more, and I was like, yeah, this is probably the end, and that's the only way he's going to find peace ever again, which is so tragic and so sad. It's almost Shakespearean, to be honest. It's poetic in a lot of ways. It's just like,
I told you before we started recording that this reminds me a lot of an Edgar Allan Poe story.
Yeah, correct. There you go.
It just like you're in it and you're along for the ride, and then you're like, oh, the inevitable conclusion is always going to be sad.
Sadness. Correct. Yeah, no, that's a very good comparison. But we love this movie, guys. We absolutely loved it. Thank you, Bibin, for putting that in your reaction video for me to sort of put this along. Really enjoyed it, guys. Let us know in the comment section what you thought about this movie. As I said, we'll quickly reflect now and jump a little bit into the previous movie that we had talked about, in spirit, before we wrap things up. So I'm going to read some of the comments. I just have 3 that I've picked out. So, guys, if you want to, it might entice you guys more. If you've listened this far, guys, why not leave a comment, and we'll get to it next time, as long as it's an insightful comment and, you are giving your thoughts about it, then we're going to talk about it. So the first one, okay, so worth mentioning that the dialogue, and this is from Keep Playing Nice, worth mentioning that the dialogue is actually much better than those subtitles make it seem. Difficult to get good subs for even on OTT websites, and this is to do with the movie spirit. Yeah, look, we agree with this, definitely. Like, it's always going to be, unless you speak the language, it's going to be very difficult to understand it completely, because you're going to miss nuances, you're going to miss, you're going to miss a lot of dialogue, and maybe
slang terms that are also simplified, stuff that
correct,
stuff that it always comes down to. And I think about this all the time as somebody who watched a lot of foreign language movies and has seen like now different subtitles pop up for other ones. For instance, I just got a movie, Brotherhood of the Wolf. It's one of my favorites to watch around this time of year, and that's a French movie. And like the subtitles that I watched when I was younger have been updated now, and they're totally different. Totally different. But then you watch a movie with, like, let's say it's dubbed, and it's dubbed in English, and then you like the actor's performance doesn't necessarily match up with the dialogue that is being delivered, and of course we know those things are there, so we do our best to really kind of read between those lines and look at the actors' faces and look at their performances and really listen to what they're saying, even though we can't understand the words. So for instance, in this movie, like Don't Fool Me, I'm sure it's not necessarily fool me. And there were other times where like I was picking up on stuff. And again, I thank you, Ashok, for like, he really sent me like a lot of phraseologies and stuff from Malayali culture that like really helped me understand that there are some times where it's just simplified. Here it is. Right. And you just put that context together. So you're absolutely right. But trust us when we say that we do our best to make sure that we're understanding the intent and not necessarily focused on the individual words in the subtitles. Yeah,
exactly right. So there will be some impact lost with that. And you are right, because a lot of the times we review a lot of older movies. So these are subtitles that were done back in the day. I don't know if there's quality controls on things like that. They probably just had maybe like a resources potentially to really dub it or really subtitle it. Sorry. So yeah, there might be some things like that as well. But look, I think because of the way that movies are presented, and especially with Malayalam cinema, with so much actors like Mohanlal and Urvashi and these people that can express so much with just their body language and their facial expressions, we get a sense of the theme. We get a sense of what they're talking about anyway. So it does pass that. But yeah, for movies like maybe Spirit, where they are trying to really be a bit more, maybe felt a bit more monologue-y, felt a bit more exposition heavy. So maybe we lost some exact things that they were saying and trying to talk about. So yeah, that could be there. But hey, that's what it is.
But again, thank you for the comment. It's not that we're saying like
I appreciate it.
We're not at all saying like you're wrong. It's we're trying to say like how we do our best to make sure we're understanding it, even though we don't speak the language.
Exactly right. But the next one's the interesting one. And this one, I think there's some back and forth between a few people on this one here. But this one might give us a little bit more, I guess, context into the cultural references about Spirit. So Kerala is one of the heaviest drinking states in India, and the people of Kerala are often labeled as heavy drinkers. Look, I'm not sure if that's true or not. That's what I'm reading the comment. I think drinking is a pretty universal thing across all countries, across all places. There's a big alcohol problem in Australia as well. It's not less...
United States, USA, USA.
Yeah, it's a big thing everywhere. So even though it is a bit of a generalization, it is understandable. Also, if you look at most commercial Malayalam films, they all glorify alcoholism so much, which is why drinking and smoking is like a style statement or a symbol in Kerala, and also in many parts of India. That part I do agree with, watching a lot of modern movies.
Yes, and thank you so much for that comment. It's just that, when we were looking at the movie, I think what I was specifically talking about was the fact that alcoholism is not an easy thing to climb out of. So our biggest issue, and I'm not saying that Kerala is not filled with heavy drinkers. The state that I live in here in the United States is also filled with heavy drinkers. I was involved in the beer industry here in Michigan for many, many years. I know my fair share.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So what I'm saying is, it was not at all reductive about how bad alcoholism is or how rampant it is or how the movies can glorify that and make people be a little bit more interested about drinking and smoking. It was just more to say that if you are drinking and smoking, you do so to excess, it's not as easy to climb out of that as that movie showed.
Yeah. Correct.
And it is a movie, right? So we have to wrap everything up nicely within 2 to 2.5 hours. But it did seem like it was a little bit easier for this person who was literally dropping bottles on the ground because he was so drunk. The next day, just be like, no, I'm good, and then and so that was more where we were getting at. Not saying that it wasn't necessarily a problem there. Just for that one individual character, it seemed a little easy for them to make different choices.
Yeah. So that was for Sarah Jacob. I think it's a she. I think she's a big fan of the show because I've seen a few comments from her. So thank you for all the support as always.
Absolutely.
And the last part of the comment was, and that's why this movie is relevant culturally. And there are lots of other movies as well that shows the perspectives of the family members and friends, which I did like how that movie did actually. It showed the broad picture, which was fantastic. Yeah. The last one, which was an interesting one, which I think we talked about, was so it was at minute 17:12. That's a good way of thinking. Actually, it would have been great to see the perspective of Alexei. So I think it's talking about when we were talking about Alexei, who was such a great character.
I still stand by that.
I still think, he was so good. But he says, I think the core of the movie is with Mohanlal's character as a main focus. Here is liquor addiction, so alcohol addiction. So yeah, I think it was trying to be like, let's put you in the frame of this guy. He's an alcoholic, and then what he has to go through personally. I think that was the intention of the film. So I definitely agree with that. But yeah, it would have been definitely interesting to see from Alexei's perspective if you wanted to see how it impacts you from another side. But maybe they wanted to put the viewer in the box seat and put you are Mohanlal in this movie or something like that, or you're going to see him with all the screen time and what he's going through rather than as an outside observer. So I understand that approach as well. And that's probably the more impactful one, because this movie was Spirit was definitely trying to go for that, that message, like alcoholism is not good. Like, let's push it in more and more, which it did quite well.
And remember, whenever I make comments like that, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just sitting here in a box with a microphone. We're just talking about these things that we love so much. So I'm never trying to say like this would have been, way better, because obviously it's a movie starring an incredibly powerful actor, and it made, it made impacts and waves in such that it was voted for, right? So I'm not at all trying to disparage the movie. I'm just saying that could have been an equally impressive story for me to see, not even necessarily a movie, just an equally impressive story. How does a normal person, by all rights, a hero in that story, deal with somebody who is involved in their life that is unquestionably an alcoholic and a father of his stepson? Like, that just seems like a really interesting story to me.
Really fascinating. But that's all we have, guys. So again, leave a comment. We're going to try this again next time and see how we go with it. But yeah, I appreciate all the comments that we get. And guys, let us know what you thought about this amazing movie. We are definitely huge fans of this movie. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite movies I've seen, I think, in quite a while.
Definitely highlight of the ones we've done recently. Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely on the higher list. This is really good. So thank you for, suggesting it. Thank you for commenting it. And Doug, like always, this was a fantastic conversation. Really looking forward to the next one. But
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye.